Sounds like my music is a little bit loud, so I'm going to fix that real quick. Okay, great. Hello, Fretful, thank you. Nice to see you here. I'm still getting set up a little bit, so give me just a few moments and I'll get started here. Okay, everything should be good. Let's go. It's already deleted all the daily levels from Bitcoin. I think I'd like to delete all this interim stuff too and just kind of reassess. This still makes sense to me. I would say this is probably more likely a range, probably just this. But I want to watch for the bottom. I think this level has proven itself enough that it can be marked fully. And beyond that, we don't really have any use to mark levels right now, unless we start to go below EMA again. I don't see too much reason to mark everything. You see a lot of charts with just like 50 lines, the like sort of Shorty B style where there's 78 lines on it, and of course one of them is going to hit and you say, oh, that's really good, I did it. But less clutter is better, it's easier to see right now, support, resistance, that's all we need to know. Easy, Bitcoin, pretty easy to chart usually. I would like to put like a little interim line here, so we know just when we're approaching what this level is, which is 52, and move on. I think this, yeah, this is already kind of a weekly chart. If TM change these to weekly colors. So when I see something like this, my dilemma is usually, do I really want to bother marking something at the Pico top? Is it really necessary? And I don't think so. You might even end up with some kind of level through here. But again, it's not important right now. All that's important is this level that has failed and seeing that this level might become a support. So this one I don't think we need to change. Losing the EMA right now looks pretty ugly. I would like to make sure that I have my RSI marks on them just for easy reference. Put always at 50. ETH BTC, you can see, I really do like this daily. Maybe I'll just hide it. This trend line has been so significant. But if we go to our weekly, probably it will hold up, yes. You can see it's just as well on a weekly, so this one already is pretty well marked. I think the only thing would be getting rid of this daily line. This needs to be visible, so bring it to the front for now. And does anything need to be adjusted? You could move this up or down a little bit, but I don't think it matters too much. I think these daily levels actually play out pretty well. I don't think there's too much adjustment to be made here. I will make this a full 2 pixel line that everyone can complain is too big, and we'll move the candles to the front. And we'll be done with this already. ETH is very interesting. It's very interesting. It's basically it's basically a double top right now, which could be very scary. If it plays out like a true double top, then you would see this break down, maybe some kind of retest of the previous level. And then this is what an ETH BTC bear market would do. Something like that would be a classic double top, having a retest of the previous low. But I don't really see that happening. My guess is more maybe just kind of idling a bit and then trending up. I think we're going to probably not necessarily hold this trend line per se. I don't think that necessarily we just stay above this, but even if we go down a bit, I don't think we'll really just fall off. I don't think we're going to see this again, at least anytime soon. If ever, it's possible that we never go to these levels again. But even if we kind of break this trend line, that's okay, as long as we hold this 5-4. I think eventually we taper up some more. Remember, we are nowhere near, even though this is a log scale, the all-time high is like 0.15, and now we are half of that. It looks like much less because it's a log scale, but if you change to linear, you can really see we're not even half of all-time high right now. There's so much room to move up. Even if you're looking for like a cup and handle, we would have to go up to like the 0.10 and then, you know, do our retrace from there. So I don't really think this is done moving. Log scale, I like more. Higher time frames, log scale matters more, but even, you know, it's same. The level is the same whether you mark log or linear, so it doesn't really matter. I think there's still plenty of room to move up. This is just a nice, this is always what I want to see, a nice gentle thing, no parabolic rise that ends up like having to break down because of parabolic action. You just have a gentle increase over time. How most stocks operate. S&P kind of action where you have your ups and your downs. You have periods of sort of gentle consolidation. And right now I think we're in one of those periods of gentle consolidation. If you had to draw lines here, it would be, you know, just sort of a pennant, which, if you're not familiar with your formations, this tends to break upward over time. So I'm still bullish long term. I think BTC will outperform in the short term, but long term, I still want to keep accumulating Ethereum. I don't see any reason to stop. And right now, I'm basically half and half. I'm not in any shitcoins at all at the moment. I'm not unwilling to trade them. I've just been taking off a little bit of time lately. I haven't been keeping up with charts too much, so I didn't want to idle in anything. So right now, I'm about half in Ethereum and half in Bitcoin. I think they both look pretty good. As long as Bitcoin keeps above about, you know, 50k, I think people will be very bullish. That's it's quite a psychological level, and we're pretty close to all-time highs, like less than 10%, is it? Or maybe around 10%. So all-time high, oh, actually 18, no, I was lying, yeah. So body close, less than 10%, but I should have specified what I was talking about. Yeah, to get an all-time high would be quite a bit, but a body close for Bitcoin is not too much of a move at this point. 10% for Bitcoin is nothing. We all know 10% in crypto is not like a 2-year process usually. It's like something that just kind of happens on a random Tuesday. ETHUSD, definitely need to update this. These are all old levels. We got a nice double bottom, and if this is a true double bottom, I chose the wrong tool here. If this is a true double bottom, what you would expect is kind of a retest of the previous level here and then continued move upward. So right now, that seems to be playing out. You're kind of stalling out at this level. So what you would be looking for here is, if you don't just blast off, to hold the 3400 basically. You want to hold 3400, maybe 33 is okay, you know, coming down around here. And that lines up pretty well with where the EMA is as well. So you probably, you know, you probably also see that you want the RSI to hold. But that's less important. Just holding this level and moving up. And then of course your target would be around here, around probably 4K. People will just, it's a nice psychological level. When you're talking about the BTC pairs, psychological levels aren't as important. But when you're talking about USD pairs, because more people tend to focus on those, psychological levels matter a lot more. So looking to 4K, if this trend continues, which really, even though we marked a lot of daily levels through here, you could view this as a consolidation, a failed breakout, and another consolidation, just a little bit lower. And viewing it like that, I don't like it so much, because you have lower high, and then this is kind of just a bot. Let me delete some of this. When you have these sort of U-shapes, they tend to be continuation patterns. When you have a coming down from the top and a U-shape, it tends to revert to what it was doing. When you have something coming up and it does some sort of U-shape, it tends to just continue what it was doing. These tend to be sort of short-term, like noise, right? These BART patterns tend to be noise. And what I mean by that is a lot of times it's triggered by some sort of news people think will be bigger than it turns out to be, or even just trading algorithm, trading bots kind of all dump at once, and then they create accumulation signals for themselves, and then they just rebuy. So this sort of thing, my worry right now would be that your trend is kind of down and that you would sort of revert to this. But I think we're already kind of breaking the other direction. So given that we're breaking the other direction, if we can make a bid for this, I think it's fine. And making that bid doesn't have to be right now, as long as we kind of post this as a double bottom and come off of this yellow zone, you know, come off of the EMA. I think this is fine to continue, and I'm not too worried about it. And if it goes lower, I'll just keep buying. ETH is something that I don't really trade. I just average into every... usually about every 2 weeks, I will make a buy, just a market buy, whatever the price is, I don't care. I have a set amount of USD worth of Ethereum that I buy every 2 to 3 weeks, usually at the most once a month, and or at least once a month, and I just accumulate, and I'm not looking to sell it anytime soon. It's just something that I'm slowly building a position in that I regard as like stock positions. You just buy it and you sit on it and you see where it is in 10 years. And I think if crypto succeeds, ETH is going to succeed. I'm not worried about it at all. So that just kind of is what it is. I would rather trade for Ethereum pairs than Bitcoin pairs, but that's something I would chart for myself, not necessarily for Twitter, because most people aren't interested in that, and I want to provide kind of public service and chart what you guys need. So mostly I'm charting USD and Bitcoin. This is FTM, Bitcoin, and I think if we go to the weekly, we're gonna need yeah, see, this is the kind of thing that going to the weekly is really tough, because of course you have the bottom down here. This makes sense as a weekly level, but then you're kind of just price exploration. So these daily levels, though, they don't really matter already. Like, you can look at sort of this spot, but if you're looking for something higher, if you're trying to figure out like where is resistance and support over here, I mean, maybe you can make an argument for this. I think that would line up pretty well. That's probably a thing that you could mark on the daily, would be something like that. Seems pretty obvious to me. you have all these wick tops and you have these body closes here, and so probably what you're looking at is some kind of fluctuation around this area until we either have a failure or a continued breakout. But if you really want like a resistance level, the downside to having a chart in price exploration is that you have to drop down your time frame, and maybe on the 4 hour you can see something. There's really even nothing on the 4 hour. You go down to the 1 hour. Maybe you would consider something around here. But the lower time frame you go, the less valid things are going to be. And we want to have more valid charts moving forward with the weeklies. What I'm going to do, considering that, is just get rid of all this stuff and mark it fresh. So I don't have a problem with this level. And as far as this goes, I'm not sure I'm happy with this. Let's turn on magnet and we can kind of think through what's going on here. Really, this is probably just a zone. Again, you know, I say this every time, but when you're marking horizontals, you're not marking exactly 2346. You're marking, you know, around 2346. These are like your quantum foam, right? It's not really like a locked in to the pixel thing. It's just a range that you're marking. And if you understand that every line you draw is really just sort of a zone inherently, then it makes understanding how price action works a lot easier. So considering these aren't like exact spots, I would be okay with just sort of drawing like a support block around here, just saying that somewhere around here is support, and that's fine. You want our candles to be in the front, and that's okay. Like, this is really all we have to work with at this point on the weekly. There is nothing but price exploration. We can zoom out a little bit and it becomes easier to see that, you know, there's nothing we can mark here. If we put this up here, it's just a one touch. This would be a one touch. This is a one touch. And you might want to be tempted to like move this block up to include the wicks or something, but if possible, I like to just include the bodies. And unfortunately, that doesn't give us a lot to work with on something like FTM. So it's very understandable that a lot of people don't like weekly charts. But if you go to the daily, you essentially have the same thing. Like I said, you can mark something like this, perhaps on the daily, and that's all right. But I wouldn't really want to play off of that by itself. Really, all we've got to work with, if we're looking at like a high time frame, is this whole area is pretty much a consolidation. So looking at it in terms of like, okay, this was a failed breakout, and then we consolidated, and now we're trying to break out again. What we would want to see here is really just anything above this zone holding, and it looks like it probably will. Your EMA is coming up nicely. We did hit a bit overbought, so retracing a little bit would make sense. And so really anything from the 35.5 would be good in my opinion, if you're watching the daily. But if you're watching a higher time frame, you know, you could come all the way down to here and still consider that like a bounce point, and that would be fine. Anything above there is going to be bullish, and basically anything above 3k. But if you were to return to this range, I would expect that ultimately it shows a lack of interest in buying this, and probably that buy pressure won't continue in the future. But for now, it's not like a really pretty zone to be looking at on the weekly. Luna, unfortunately, we don't need new levels, and really this is like, the daily is so good. This daily has been so good, especially with the resistance, that I'm really hesitant to deviate from the daily, because every time we hit the top of this resistance, we get shoved down. And you know, right now we're hitting lower support, and we're in a current downtrend that's going to be retesting this support very soon if we don't take off. I mean, right now we're basically already retesting it, right? We're at support and we're under the EMA, and we are deciding if we want to give up RSI or not. And if we are going to fail to reclaim the EMA and move through support, I would consider this top line like your early ejection point. This bottom line is like your, okay, this trade was a bad choice, and this like very low level here is your absolute, like, why haven't you ejected yet? You must be insane level. So this is basically an accumulation zone until it decides it's not, right? So this is nothing, this is chop, this is sideways action. Through here, nothing is happening. If you want to look at the current macro though, you had a failed breakout attempt and you've proceeded down. So we want to play risk reward and we want to minimize that risk. Right now, from support, from the earliest ejection point to about 2%, 3%, that's an acceptable risk to me. I like to keep my risk around 2% or less. So if you were interested in Luna right now, buying here, I think is absolutely fine. If you are willing to eject here and risk that we could go a little deeper and then bounce, and then you would have lost like 2% and missed the bounce. Otherwise, what you would want to do is wait for something closer to the bottom of the range. And at that point, you would be better off looking for a reversal or looking for something to come down here. If you are waiting to buy, you're probably looking at this level as your earliest entry point, around 8,500. And if you want to be ultra safe, super ultra mega safe, no risk whatsoever kind of person, like 98% chance you succeed, then you're just going to wait for an actual confirmed breakout and buy on that breakout confirmation. That's how you play smart, but don't make the most money. If you want to make the most money, then you want to take the risk here close to support, when your downside risk is like a few percent, but your upside, even if there's a failed breakout, is almost 20%. Like, even if we come back to resistance and get checked again and stay in the range, your upside would be like 20%. So that's how you would want to play this. You would enter here, you would eject if you go down, you would hold if you go up, and you sell the resistance no matter what, even if you think it's going to continue. And then if it breaks out, you just buy it again higher, and you add the difference to your initial cost, so your break-even floor is raised, but you are still in a position that is profitable, and you can follow that continuation. That's how I tend to track my numbers. That's not how you track your numbers for taxes, but that's how I track my numbers to actually figure out my total profit. But we do want to look at the weekly. I've been rambling about the daily. And, you know, this is not a chart where I want to erase the daily, because it does line up very well. So I'm going to just take a moment and hide all of these on the weekly. But Luna has been such a good, clean chart on the daily that I don't want to just erase it. Like, I'm comfortable doing that with something like Bitcoin, because Bitcoin's going to be around. You know, you can play very macro with Bitcoin and just accumulate over time. It's not a big deal. Same for Ethereum. But something like Luna, you're playing altcoins, you're basically playing leveraged Bitcoin when you do that. So you want to really keep up a little bit more. I would say that this line, I think I marked it as speculation when it hit these 3 wicks previously. This line's probably from there. And it does sort of line up with these, but it's completely disrespected through this range, so I'm not in love with it. I think I would like to reassess where we mark that, and probably we're going to look at a bottom that's closer to down here. And again, these are kind of ranges where we can mark like a top and a bottom, and it's totally fine. So I would consider this a high time frame support, and I actually think it would make a lot of sense to look toward these wicks. I mean, you can consider the candle tops if you want, but I think it also is going to make sense to put eyes on something a little higher on the weekly, because you've got close enough interactions from all 4 of these wicks that it's likely we're going to end up seeing a resistance level that actually ends up being up here somewhere around the 10k. And it makes sense that a lot of people would be looking to take profits around 10k, just sort of psychologically. So I think that likely plays out to be something. But for now, if we have to choose something to mark, we want to favor the most recent thing. So rather than marking the bottom of this block, I would mark the top of it, because the more recent candles form the top of it, and we would end up with something like this on the weekly. With a range, we're looking at sort of a safety zone here would be this middle area. By safety zone, another way to think about that would be like a no trade zone. So what you end up with is, even on the daily, we said, hey, look, this is a great place for risk reward on the daily. With the macro being down, you know, you want to zoom out a bit and see what's the risk on the weekly. And the risk on the weekly is significantly higher, right? The risk on the weekly is like 17% downside versus 9% upside. So if you are a low time frame trader who favors the daily, then this might be a good place for you. But if you zoom out, you see that you're actually buying a resistance rejection on a higher time frame. And to me, that's more legitimate. The higher the time frame, the more legitimate. And if you look at, like, even if we remain bullish and we follow this EMA up, typically you have something like this, where you break away from the EMA and then you range a little bit and you return to the EMA. So we've broken away from the EMA and then we're kind of ranging a little bit. So I would expect us to, at some point, return to the EMA. And that's, we have an absolute blow off top, which you don't really want. You want stable price action for long-term steady growth. So I would not at all be surprised if Luna kind of chills for a little bit and then has a nice breakout later. So if you are a believer, if you're a true believer, cultist, you can consider this an accumulation zone. If you are just a swing trader, then you probably want to wait for a body close above this level and then look to take at least a good chunk off around the 9900 or 10k in case that becomes another rejection, because it has rejected from that level 4 times now. So even if you get a body close above, you should be scared of this level. But if you want to look for max opportunity, then you're going to look toward this and kind of a return to the EMA. Luna's very nice. It's not been great for me to trade. I've made some mistakes trading it, and to be honest, I made a good amount of money. I lost a good amount of money. I've done both with Luna. So, you know, like, I think, for example, I saw this doji here and I saw us posting some green and I rushed into a trade. I went a little too early, and so I played this switch wrong, but then hitting this support, I also played that correctly on that reversal. And this was one of those big like whale dump days, and when I saw this happening, I got really lucky and I bought almost the very bottom of this wick too. So made some good money, lost some good money, made some good money. Right now just sidelined on Luna. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster and I want to play it better. I've done some bad mistakes. We all do bad mistakes. Even after many years of trading, you get blinded whenever you find yourself. For me, like, looking at the daily is kind of it's acceptable if you are really going to monitor like every day, a few times a day you're going to be looking at charts. That's fine. But when I find myself looking at hourly charts, then I know I'm out of my expertise zone and I should really like not be in that trade. But sometimes I'm stubborn and I think I'm smarter than I am, and I fuck it up. So we all have our egos to fight, and sometimes I lose that battle just like everybody else. But I think this is where Luna stands right now. Very simple chart. We're looking basically between 7k and 9k. Doge behaving exactly as I expected it to. I said when we lose 550, which is a daily level, but also was a confluence of this weekly level pretty closely. I told to short when we lost this level. So if you shorted when we lost this level, then you're doing very well for yourself now. You are up about 20% before leverage. So even if you just did like a 2x, then, you know, feel free to buy me a nice orange juice or something someday. And yeah, you're doing pretty well. I think there's nothing now between where we are and the earliest point of support being this 285. Basically, we're going to 300. It's kind of programmed. You can see that there's not a lot of buying interest down here. This wicked all the way through this level like it was nothing. And in the past, you had support, like your last ditch support was here, and we have now tested that as a resistance. And there was this huge fight by bulls to kind of take that weekly level, but you see they stalled out like right there, right at the weekly. So all the signs are down, the confluence is down, and if we want to mark our RSI, I'm sure 100% that we're going to see it's below 50 at this point, which tends to, which tends to signal a downtrend. Basically, bottom half is bearish, top half is bullish, and we've lost the EMA. You know, we went up and retested it, retested the weekly, lost RSI. Like, there's no reason to be bullish on this right now, especially with this big fight from bulls that was totally erased. And so I think a best bet for bulls would be some kind of rounding out, where you're going to find maybe a new support level that we previously didn't have. And that's going to be the best case scenario for bulls. But in the meantime, there is no reason to be bullish. There's absolutely no sign that this sort of downtrend has been broken yet. You could draw a line there and kind of look for when it wants to break through that the sort of tops of those candles, and that might be your early reversal sign. But I wouldn't really trust that. You know, it's so often that people play breakouts that just dwindle. You really want to find some kind of horizontal support, either a rounding out that comes up to reclaim a level, or something that consolidates for a while and gives you a floor that you can play. I don't like to play diagonals. They are, generally speaking, less valid. So I don't really see any reason to mark up anything new. We could promote this to like a full level if we want to, and in that case convert this down to a resistance block being, you know, right here, so it's a little bit easier to see that we've retested that. But as far as moving anything else, it's really unnecessary. Dogecoin fortunately has very accurate price action because there are so many retail people involved in it. It's very hard to manipulate if you're not Elon Musk, because, you know, the TikTok crowd, there's so many millions and millions of people more holding Doge than there are like AVAX. Like, normies aren't out there buying AVAX, so you can't really manipulate this. It's just the supply's too big, the market cap's too big, unless you are really breaking some news for it. It's just what it is. It's easy to play. It's not going to surprise you too much. AVAX. I'm really mixed about whether I wanted to play this level in AVAX. This was the god line on the daily, but I expected some kind of reversal here, and I'm not convinced that we have it yet. Typically, when you see this sort of parabolic downturn, you know it's not going to just like go into the abyss. It's not going to happen like that. It's just something that doesn't tend to happen. Even if it wants to continue down, it's going to have to kind of give some relief. And this is a level where it would make sense to have some kind of relief pump, even if it's just like to tap the EMA and continue downward. But I was expecting a lot more than what we've gotten so far. So unless this starts to take off a little bit, I think I'm going to continue to stay away. Even though, man, when you see a parabolic downturn into like such a clear support level, it's very tempting to play. And the downside risk here, it's about 5%, which is not something I really like. Like I said before, I like to have about maybe 3% maximum, ideally like 2%. So I was looking at this around the bottoms of these and thinking, you know, it's around 3%. Maybe I should, I don't know, maybe not, because the impulse down was so big and I ended up not playing that. I could have played it, but I only would have been up like basically trading fees. So I don't feel like I missed anything yet. If we have some kind of real reversal level, you know, you'd be looking around here for some kind of confirmation move upward, which is the 12.5, around 12.5k. And that might show you an early sign on the daily that you're moving up. But as far as the weekly goes, there's not a whole lot to look at. The price history on this is so strange. Should delete that so we can see more. I mean, like I said, these sort of U's, these bar patterns tend to be continuations. So you see big continuation down. And then whenever you get a huge impulse up like this, you expect it to fall off. And of course it does. Generally, when I see a parabola like this, I expect about 30% downside. And this ended up with 60% downside, not even counting the wick. So wick to bottom is more like 80%. So this is something with like crazy volatility in the past, and now we've had this huge shoot up again. And it's something where you have to be aware of what it's done in the past. You know, if it were to want to come down all the way to here, you've got tops and sort of like a wick bottom retest at this point. And it's something where the EMA is very close, and it could really just like, this is such a flop, such a like failed attempt to just skyrocket, that seeing it come down to this sort of level again would not be very surprising at all. I'm very, very wary of AVAX on a high time frame. But let's mark it up for real, and we'll see if there's any sort of early signs that we can look for. I think this level is fine. There's not really any reason to mark this. We can look to the past to see if anything makes sense. A lot of people would want to mark something like this, but unless the weekly closes here, you know, if the weekly closes here, then that's very clean, but I wouldn't really mark it for now. I would be more interested in something like more recent. So perhaps you got like the tops of these, the tops of this, and the current wick. I think this level makes more sense. And as far as marking something above, I mean, really, like, what are we going to mark at this point? It's maybe something like this would be a decent level. Would probably take the magnet off and let this be sort of like a rounded off kind of level. And at that point, you're going to be looking to the top of this as kind of your resistance level. Let's see if we can make that a little prettier. And just, it's really strange to see something come through here. You might want to mark something like this as an interim level. That would be totally fine. I'm okay with having something around there as like a maybe, because this wick is kind of close enough, and you've got some bodies, you've got a wick here. But the reason I don't really like this sort of level is it's not respected. So you wicked through it, body closed through it. And so, I mean, and here's like a wick to it and a wick to it. So of the things that have interacted with it, 2 respected it and 3 kind of didn't. So I'm not crazy about that sort of level. I would rather just consider this to be probably a potential like consolidation area. If you're going to be bullish, you probably want to hang on to this level. But it's also, I think, likely that you might get some kind of wick action below. Wouldn't be surprised to see something like that, even if we maintain bullish outlook in the very long term. So, you know, to look at sort of the bottom side of this, yeah, maybe like around there would make sense. You have some very nice ranging here. You've got wick top, kind of close enough, and then some body closes here. Not crazy about it, but just in consideration of where the EMA might end up, I wouldn't be surprised to see some kind of wick to the bottom, even if this continues onward. Probably would just leave that off for now. Not too convinced. Actually, you know what? I will leave it in just to see if it plays out. If you're not familiar with how I mark charts, if you've seen this before and kind of wondered, the solid lines are things I'm very confident about. The dotted lines are kind of things that may or may not play out. And that's why they are smaller and not solid. But for now, I just... This is a really hard chart to look at on the macro scale. And, you look at it on, like, the daily, and you can see this is a very clear interaction point, this weekly. And it would not be surprising at all to see the daily react to it. Oh, excuse me. But to zoom out to the weekly, that doesn't look great. You just have some crazy roller coaster going on. So if you want to trade the daily, like I said, if you're willing to really babysit this trade and watch your phone several times a day, every couple hours you check in, make sure you set your stops very aggressively, then you can trade this, of course. But today doesn't look impressive. Yesterday was red, and your downside risk from here is almost 7%. That's just too much for me. And it's very possible that you can like wick to that level and still take off, which would be like the worst case scenario, right? You set your stop loss, you lose 7%, and then it takes off without you. So it's just too much. It's too much risk for me personally. I don't like it to play that. I would rather see at least more sign of reversal. I would rather see at least like taking this EMA back, taking perhaps this interim level and making a bid for this resistance again. And if it were to do that, then this macro uptrend would look pretty nice. You would have just called the reversion to mean, where you're fluctuating around this sort of uptrend line, and that's totally fine. But if that's not what's happening right now, then what you're going to have is simply a regular reversal where that marks the top. And I think we get a decision pretty soon, so I don't feel any need to rush into this based on a daily chart when the weekly is so very ugly. Rose is something I only look at kind of for fun. The daily... I was looking at it right here and I was like, oh, this is interesting. So I haven't even changed these green because they were red the last time I looked at it. And I thought like, wow, Rose is really rounding out. This could actually like continue an uptrend. I would be interested in buying if it can claim this level. And then I checked back a couple days later and it was all the way up there, and I knew there's no way you go vertical and don't just retrace all of that. So of course we've retraced all of that at this point. And yeah, very clear resistance, very clear support on the daily. But at this point this coin is old enough we can look to the weekly, and the weekly is not very great. This coin's history is... A lot of people really believe in it. A lot of people just view it as another shit coin, and regardless of your stance, I think we can get rid of most of this and just focus on the weekly. It's not something that really has huge moves. I mean, it had a swing down, a downtrend, a consolidation, and then this is all completely abnormal. So, basically in its history, it's months-long history, going on a couple years now. It's... Wait, is that right? No, 1 year now. It's just like three major moves. It's not too exciting, but I think it's very clear that you have a top you can paint around here. Not necessarily to include those wicks, but easy enough to mark this level. Probably want to extend this just to show that it does have history. And then we'd be looking for support below. I don't think too many people are interested in really trading this. I don't hear much about it at this point. This is obviously like a close enough level. And the EMA rising to meet it makes a lot of sense. I do want to mark the RSI for this. but I think its history has not respected the RSI too much. Let me see. From here, kind of lost the bottom, yeah. So, yeah, the RSI really just kind of, it's been accurate, but not so important of an indicator for this coin. Where else can we look? That makes sense to me. Just looking for recency, you have a lot of levels that make like a lot of sense on a weekly. I don't think we need to mark all of these though, just in the interest of keeping the chart clean. We'll just mark like a couple below, and there's really nothing to mark above. Something around here probably, but I really don't think we're going to see that very soon. If you have this huge sort of blow off price action, it usually takes a long time for something to recover from that, so it's probably not something we'd be too interested in trading unless it begins to consolidate or something like that for a long time, at which point I would be looking for it, you know, maybe in a couple months or something to see if that's happened. And then if the entire market goes up, this is probably something that will get pulled up by Bitcoin. Same for this. JST is complete shitcoin. Like, let's be real. It's nothing important. We can look at the daily, and the daily was actually kind of promising. So I drew this sort of the god line here, and it broke through and launched itself, and right now it's trying to reclaim the EMA, it's trying to reclaim RSI. A lot of things I look for, which are nice, but this was something I was worried about making like some kind of head and shoulder, and it really didn't. It just continued down, which actually could be a good thing for it, because instead of making like a slow bleed out, it just got it over with, consolidated, and now it's trying to pump. So what you want to see from this now, I probably wouldn't want to be necessarily trading this crappy doji. I'd probably be looking for it to break above the 165 and continue along with the market. But I'm not too interested in this, because the way that it consolidated, it definitely consolidated in like the lower half of this range. When it consolidated before and pumped, it was a good amount of this range. You can see like here it only consolidated in the top half and could not break out, and then failed. So this could be a good sign. It's consolidating in the bottom half but not breaking down, so maybe it will be successful to break out. But I mean, it's a shit coin. You can see single day candles that go 20% in a day, you know, 12% in a day. Over a 2-day span, it goes 21%. And really, how are you going to play that? How are you going to find something where your downside risk is only 2% when it can fluctuate 20% in a day? And you look at like this candle right here. Look at this red candle. It's almost entirely wick. Anyone playing leverage on this day, it went up 16% and down 6%. If you're playing leverage on that sort of coin, you're going to get fucked no matter what you do. The chances that you like longed this and got out on a wick instead of thinking like, oh, this is it, it's gonna, you know, the chances are very low that you trade that successfully in anything but spot. So I just don't like to trade things that have crazy wicks. And you can see that that's not new to this. Look at this, look at this candle. You know, you like the candle body is fine. It's like pretty big for crypto, 8.5% candle body. That's fine. But throughout the day, it pumped 49%, and that's not even from wick bottom. Like, it fluctuated 50% of its market value in one day. And you're going to try and trade that with stop losses. That's going to be very foolish. This is something you would only want to trade in spot. So coming out to the weekly to do some work, we can see that the daily doesn't really align with anything. Perhaps this bottom level is significant, and perhaps this sort of resistance level we could keep, but I would rather just delete it all and start from something basic. So favoring recency, easy to see that that's a resistance point, and if you're looking for support, probably something around here would make sense as well. You've got the bottoms here, you've got some wick tops. It's not too respected here, but you could probably consider that like a failed breakout attempt. So we want to find also a support, and considering recency, you wouldn't really think of, maybe you would want to mark the middle of this as sort of an interim level, and that would make sense. I wouldn't mind that so much, but if you look back a little bit, it's not really a level that was super respected. All of this is chopping through, and even before that, you did have some wick interactions here, but it's not necessarily a level that always plays out. It wasn't respected before, then it was kind of temporarily respected, and then not, and then a little. So I don't like it a whole lot. I would just probably demote this to being some sort of interim and consider that like the support block, perhaps. That would be like your early ejection point. If you believe this is reversing from this doji and this support block, then what you want to do right now on a high time frame is take this EMA and take this level here and sort of pop up and confirm that you are leaving this range. Because right now, you have the potential to be forming an inverse head and shoulders with a neck right here. And that would be quite a nice setup to continue on. But you don't want to rush into that because it could very well just be this instead, right? So you want to, if you believe that's the sort of thing you're looking at, the confirmation signal is a breakthrough of the neckline, which would be this psychological level, taking 200. And you want to take that 200 pretty decisively. And if you're a cautious person, what you would want to do is wait for a retest and take off, and then you would buy it on the takeoff from the retest. For now, I'm comfortable to just mark the bottom of this as a support and leave those levels as they are. And that's what I really love about weeklies. You don't need a bunch of lines. It's very simple. It's very uncomplicated to trade high time frames, and it's much safer. So it takes out a lot of the opportunity to make mistakes, and it makes it much clearer to see where the trends are. Right now, our local trend is up, and we have a deviation coming out. So ideally what you want to see is that this is just some sort of return to mean deviation. But if it shows that it's not, and this level just fails, if this resistance holds, if the EMA is not able to be reclaimed, then we're going to be looking for more downside. So this is not like a good decision point, right? If you want your 3% risk or something, just down to the support block is 10% or more, and up to the resistance is only 5%, twice as much downside risk as gain. Not a good trade right now, so we're not going to make it. KSM was something that I posted the broadening wedge on. I said it was going to break down, and sure enough, here we are breaking down from the broadening wedge. Pretty textbook. Like, I see a lot of people post this as being bullish, and they don't realize they mark the top, they mark the bottom, and they post these rising broadening wedges, and they're like, look, price action is going up, like it's gonna keep going up. But this is a bearish formation. The trick is just figuring out, like, it could have very easily just bounced for another reach to the top of the wedge. So the way to play this is simply to wait for the breakdown. And so if you extend this out, right, you can see that the breakdown happened here. You fall out of the wedge. Oh no, I don't want text. Excuse me. You see that you fell out of the wedge, and then you retested it and started to continue down. So if you're paying attention to the wedge, you might see this sort of level as like a support, and you fell out of the wedge, you retested it, and then you tried to form a local support and failed. So at the absolute worst, you would have been ejecting around this daily support line here, right? No one should have gotten out below 7k if they were paying attention to this. But obviously people still panic sold all the way down. And now looking at the daily, we would have to mark like new lines for all of this, and probably you have some kind of daily around there, but that's a lot complicated, and we want to, like I was saying before, for JST, was it? You have these candles that are 20% in a day. You can't really do like stop loss trading because you just, you know, like this day you go up 22%, and then the day before you went down 17%. You can't run that with a stop loss. It's not possible. You're going, like, you have to be willing to lose like 35% and still get left behind. So you don't want to do that. The best way to trade these is either leverage based on the direction it's going, and you're going to babysit it on like an hour candle at like just sitting there. If you can watch it, that's fine. Some people love to do that. I personally find it very stressful. I don't like it. That's why I got into high time frame trading in the first place. And I don't like to sit and babysit hour candles, 15-minute candles, 4-hour candles even are a bit stressful to me, because I like to leave home and you know, exercise or just go for a walk or something, and the whole time I'm out I'm thinking about what's my Bitcoin doing right now, and I don't like to live like that, so I don't. If you do, that's great, but if you're looking at the daily now, you have to be looking for something new. I would rather just go to this weekly and see what we've got happening here, because KSM, like, the thing is, it looked great, right? This was your average price action. The problem KSM has right now is that this has become the average price action. So you have the reversion to mean idea that you might go above the average price, you might go below, you might even have these huge swings like so, but ultimately you're going back toward this average price. And now we have deviated from that, and our average price action, we've got some above, some below, some above. Until proven otherwise, we should assume that this is the new course of the price action. So it looks much worse now. You could have bought it at basically any point in its history. If you bought KSM like anywhere through here and you still got it, it might be time to consider at least just take off the profit to make the bag that you remain with free, right? You sell enough to cover your initial cost and then let whatever you have remaining be free coins. That's how I accumulated a lot of my bags. But I think we can find some very sensible weekly levels very easily. We can look at something like this as a spot. Probably this is going to play out as well. Somewhere around here we can see what makes the most sense. I think you would probably draw sort of a level like so. Around here would make the most sense to me. If we come in a little closer, you will see why. You do have sort of some wick tops that go above. I don't know if I like the top of this. Like, this is the risk is that you always want to keep extending your boxes, like, oh well, now what about this wick bottom? And that can make sense sometimes, but if you want to keep your charts cleaner, a little bit tighter, a little bit sexier, then you probably don't want to get in the habit of doing that. So what we would do instead is just favor more recent price action. So this is sort of a close enough to mark something like that is fine. 61.53, we can just round this off, and it's like a close enough. I don't really like to have this huge level, even if it can help you see that this is very much just a range. But something like this looks more legitimate. Yeah, I'm gonna have some indecision here, I can tell you. These don't really line up great. And this is where you get people who are like, RTA is, you know, astrology for men or something like that. Because you do get this sort of thing sometimes where it's not really respecting a lot. And I think the reason that this becomes difficult is because this is really like your whole range. You definitely want some sort of interim level in here, just instinctively that's what you want, but it's not really that clear that there is one there. And I think I would just bump this up a little. It's close enough. If you really want to be obsessive, you can just round these off. It's not a big deal. Yeah, I definitely think you need to consider this like a bit, right? But for me, I don't know that I would want to draw a box there. This is more like a point of decision to me. I would rather mark this as like a no trade zone. It's like a yellow caution zone. And you can see that there was sort of like kind of acted as a support, kind of acted as resistance, kind of acted as a support. So it's a control zone, but I don't think there's any particular level. You have a lot of wicking. It's also a lot of body closes. Body close on this side, but also wicking. So it's tempting to draw some sort of line through here, maybe a little bit higher, maybe a little bit lower. But I think really what you're looking at is this is the zone to close above. And this is the zone you don't want to stay in. And that's kind of that. For now, you've just got lower high. So previous high, current high, previous low. If you're going to post a lower low, then you would expect this 47 to fail and start heading downward. And you could mark this as like a thing if you want to. Not really necessary, but we can also do that just for hope, for clarity, for whatever reason you want to call it. Not necessary, but yeah, the bottom of this, you'd probably consider usually these little sort of stop gaps, you would just consider them as blocks. Not in love with this chart. I might need to revisit it, but for now, I've no interest in playing it anyway. You kind of have a swoop up and a swoop down, and so we would want to see that the mean is still going to average up and get reclaimed. Until then, price action averaging down, not sexy, not something we want to trade. HBAR, something I'm not too familiar with. Someone requested, and it had a very clear consolidation. You know, doesn't get much more obvious consolidation than that. Failed breakout attempt, another breakout attempt that is approaching the EMA here. So what we're going to see, this is why you don't want just a huge up candle. They tend to break down, a huge up candle, and then it tends to break down. Like, the longer this happens, the more time you have to spend in consolidation establishing floors. And so it would be good for HBAR to establish a new higher floor here, but now it's something it has to do because of this stupid breakout. Instead of just like filtering up slowly and you know, having a little bit of noise maybe, now it has to spend time going sideways to make up for this, to make up for scaring away people who, you know, somebody was buying up here. So you burn a lot of people and they tend to want to stay away. This is already a weekly chart, so we don't really need to update anything, but this is obviously not a good weekly line, so we want to move that. Probably something around there is fine. And I'm not sure how I feel about these. Yeah, it's a bit strange. I think what I would rather do is just not even mark the top, because we're already below. At this point, really what we want is to stay away from this green. That's really it. And we can mark this actually probably as yellow. Make more sense. Just sort of the cautionary zone. But yeah, nothing's changed for HBAR. All it needs to do is stay above this 616. This is basically our god line right now. Absolute last ditch, the 580. Anywhere below that. And it's been so long consolidating the people who have been accumulating, who didn't sell this breakout, if you were to go back into this level, you expect them to capitulate. Probably they get tired of this, they see that they've missed opportunities and it's not going to play out the way they wanted, and you would expect them to get tired of that and kind of leave. If they didn't leave here, then they'd probably be very frustrated after this. And you know, you're talking about waiting for another like long-term consolidation, then probably no one is going to want to do that, and probably they'll just look for other opportunities unless they're very, very die-hard people. Dot. We got a lot of bullshit marked on this, unfortunately overlapping. Daily, I don't know how this has played out. Yeah, daily is kind of old. Looks like I would need to update all of this anyway. I don't know when I extended these out, but definitely not valid anymore. Probably the easiest thing to do here is just delete stuff. Anything that's not purple, we'll just go ahead and get rid of. Please, and thank you. Okay. Okay. See how much sense any of this makes at this point. It's a black. And this line is fine. This is also fine. Not super in love with that. This is playing out well at the moment. This is playing out well at the moment. I don't necessarily see any reason to change anything except for the fact that it looks a little bit sloppy to have so much on this right now. So right now what's happening is we are trying to keep our RSI, we're trying to keep our EMA, we're trying to keep our weekly support. Nice trifecta of things that we want to do, but we're very far away from that weekly support. If you had buys set and you caught that wick, then you're doing pretty well. And you can set a stop loss that will enable you to stay in profit even if we move closer to the weekly. But in the meantime, we have a month of down, 4 weeks of down, which established a lower high. So the real concern for people should be coming down to a lower low off of that lower high. Might put us around 3k or something. And for the sake of keeping things cleaner, I think I'll just get rid of like these lower levels right here. This one doesn't look great, to be honest. I don't like this a whole lot. It's not respected here. I guess it's fine. It's respected here, it's respected here. Yeah, this level is fine. It just looks a little bit ugly for being marked through this. But easy solution, we just don't mark it through that, right? We can just move it over and then it's fine. It looks much better over here. And it favors recency more, a little bit more recent price action. So I think this is fine. We've essentially got 3 levels for DOT, and if we zoom out, we can see really how the macro behaved. This is something that bled and then shot up very well. This was more or less, please give me the arrow when I click on it, thank you. And this is more or less something that went sideways, but the other kind of sideways. And so if we really simplify our trends, you're at this decision point where you have to decide, are we going to just have some market noise off of this weekly and have this huge, very inclined rate up? And I think that's unlikely. I think more likely is that you would see some kind of continuation at least, and then what you would want for continued growth is a gentler sort of reversion to mean pattern. That's, asking this to just continue up is quite ridiculous, that by November you would go up you know, you would double in price in like a month. That's not really what you want. That's just going to end up having something like this happen, some kind of big breakdown. The more parabolic you go up, the more correcting you have to do. And you can see that happening here, where you had a really just vertical line up, and then really you're bleeding down. You do have some big pumps, but you're bleeding down 50%. So if you get another big like vertical line up, you kind of expect that you would also bleed back down. And so you don't want that. You want slow and steady growth. You want this to end up being more of this type of reversion to mean, where your growth over time, despite any volatility, is pretty stable and pretty predictable. And so probably what you would want to see if you are going to be bullish is this weekly to hold, and then a gentle reclaim of around the 6,700, the 7,000. That's what I would be looking for. In the meantime, I would expect probably you're going to see more downside, unless this is like quite a gentle climb. Don't want to see it blow off like that. If it does, I'll just wait for it to turn around, and I would rather short it than buy it. This is .btc as well, just a different chart. So yeah, this was a daily chart, I think, but really this is all just a range. So it fell out of the range, it reclaimed it. If you want to be really bullish, you can try to paint some kind of image of you know, inverse head and shoulders, but I don't really think this necessarily qualifies as a shoulder, and this definitely would not yet. It would have to start reversing first. This is about where the weekly was, so looking for that to hold. Either way, no matter what, from a daily or weekly standpoint, you want this block to hold if you're bullish. But I don't think at this point I really need two charts, so just close that one. That's the KuCoin chart. This is the Binance chart. Probably the Binance is more accurate anyway. Sushi is, you know, it was breaking out here and people were so excited, and I said, I tried to warn, like, you need to watch for body close. And I think a lot of people I was talking to about it went in anyway. They kind of aped. They thought, you know, it's been accumulating on the weekly. It's been accumulating for so long, and it's got this nice retest of the top of the block, and now we're breaking out. We're just gonna go. And I was saying, like, no, you have to wait for a body close. And then we didn't get a body close, and since then we've just absolutely dumped. So I mean, there's really not much to say other than you gotta wait for body closes. Yeah, these old levels could be done away with. I don't know what those really are. And I mean, right now it looks really bad because I had marked this wick before, but it's actually much lower now. We're just kind of losing this level. And if you zoom way out, to have, I mean, this is basically all a consolidation, right? If you're bullish sushi, you want to see this kind of long-term consolidation break up. But if you're really paying attention, you had two like equal highs and then a lower high. Lower low. This is gonna be a lower low. If you are looking at reversion to mean, it's pretty simple to see if we draw this line, what's happening. Like this one line, probably if you weren't seeing it before, you're seeing it now, right? So you can tell what's happening with sushi on the macro scale since beginning of 2021. All year, this has been stagnant at best. And now it's trying to fall out of this range for the first time ever, right? There are no body closes outside of this range. If we zoom in, you can see this will be the lowest body close, and today in Japan it's Saturday, so maybe like Friday night in the West, but it's only got a couple days if it's going to spring back up, but I don't think it's going to. I think it's going to close below this range for the first time since entering this range. And if you're looking at the macro, that's very bad. That's going to be psychologically pretty damaging. There's really nothing until about here, below this, that you can look to, unless something like, it's possible something like this could play out, where you have this one wick top and, you know, a little bit of interaction here. But regardless, that's around 1500. And so you're looking at losing, you know, 25% or something before you have a next support. And to be in such a long consolidation and then fail is terrible luck. To be in, like, especially you're going further and further from being overbought as you lose traction here. You're not like anywhere close to oversold, but you're just kind of like trending down over time. You're just posting lower highs, lower highs, lower highs. So if we get rid of all of this, you know, the next lower high, where would that be? If we're looking at something like this, maybe our next lower high might even try to break back into this range or something. And that would be your risk reward play to try and reclaim this range, but it just doesn't look very attractive to me. From a macro standpoint, I don't know why you would be interested in playing this as it's losing a range it's been in for, we can see exactly, if I can find it fast enough, I'll do it. If not, then it's whatever. But is it here? Yes, date range. So it's been in this range for 266 days. If you want to include only the weeks in this range, 252 days that it really made breakout attempts. And then the most recent pump, it didn't make a breakout attempt. It didn't get to the top of the resistance as it previously had on the last two breakout attempts. And every time the floor has held, and now it's not. So we failed to get to resistance even, and now our floor is failing. It just doesn't look good at all. There's really nothing to change here. Normally I would mark my weeklies as purple, but with Sushi, I basically only look at the weekly, and it's been like pointless to look at the daily because all it does is go down over time. Here's the Sushi daily if you really want to see more closely how this reversion to mean has played out. It's just swing below, swing above, swing below, swing above. Longer time below, longer time above. Doesn't really matter. It's all going the same direction, and that macro direction is down. And to zoom in on this daily, you can see what's happening with the weekly level, where, you know, it's kind of gone toward where the previous wick action was, but it's just failing out at the bottom. And even on the daily, you have this other level around 22k, where it was support, 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 and then it plummeted through and did not even retest. It was not even able, so far, maybe it will go up and retest that. But, you know, if you're trading the daily, that's what you at least need to reclaim. For me, I would say I wouldn't really want to trade it down here. I would want to see it come back to like this sort of range. But for now, I'm okay with just not even looking at that. SRM, unfortunately, I didn't trade. I was looking at it around here and like, oh, I want to buy if it retests this, and then it did and shot off, and I think I did trade a little bit. Maybe just like this section though. I don't think I did too much. So yeah, this would be like really scary sort of thing, wouldn't it? Or even if you want to draw that a little tighter, but I don't really care too much about that. On the daily, of course, you can see this is a daily chart and consolidated, tried to break out, consolidated, broke down. Pretty easy to see that that's not holding your uptrend. Your macro trend is now quite obviously down. And so you have the task of finding out where is going to be the bottom of this, and that makes the most sense. From the daily perspective, you're losing sort of the top of this. This wick is sort of a close enough bottom. You rode this a little bit. Didn't even try to reverse, just treated it as a resistance and you're losing it now. So this is almost... I mean, there's a smallest chance in the world that it could bounce from something like this. But probably most likely it's headed to 1300 on the daily. But I want to zoom out and see what we've got on the weekly. This is actually getting pretty close to oversold, so that's nice to see if you are a day trader. But if you're not a day trader, this line is really nothing. This line is kind of also nothing. I think you'd be better off looking to the past. Oh, I'm starting to kind of get a headache looking at all of this. We're almost done. I'll try to power through a couple more. But give me just a moment. I'm going to get an ice pack. Sorry, if you're not aware, my health is very bad. I'm an old man with bad health. And so I need to take care of myself a little bit real quick. And I'll be back in like a minute. Just give me 1 minute. I gotta cool down. I'm getting too... All right, here we go. So does this level make sense? Probably not as much sense as this. But we definitely are going to have something in between. This makes a lot of sense to me. And for the sake of cleanliness, we probably don't need that line way up there. That makes a lot of sense as well. We could probably pretty safely mark this as like a sort of resistance block. Did I say Brock? I'm so fucking bad sometimes. L and R. Famously difficult sometimes. I'm really kind of digging this line. Here, extend it. Catches these tops, catches this interaction, this wick all the way out here. And I think I would put it a little bit higher, probably around there. But I would still like to extend it all the way out. And so we would get our support block to be right around here. That makes sense. The only thing I don't like is it's not really extending downward to meet this. So if we are going to favor recency, which you must always, then we should probably move this a little closer. This does give us quite a large block, which I'm not a fan of. Not a fan of having these huge ranges. Like if we look at this, it's going to be, you know, a 12% range, but it is what it is. When you have candles that are going 50%, just the body, not even the wick, then having a support block that's 12% really doesn't, you know, is like not that surprising. So you could extend this already if you wanted to. Makes enough sense to go like all the way back there. I kind of like to just put it there. I really sort of want to just drop this down. I think that might make it a little cleaner, a little bit easier to tell what's happening. And we could probably delete this for now, just for the sake of cleanliness on the chart. I don't have a problem with that. If we start to go back up, then we just drop that line back on there. It's not a big deal. And we can zoom in a little bit, so these are easier to see. And there we are. So again, as I keep saying, I know it's redundant. Whenever you have something that just really pops off, you're going to retrace, and the harder it pops off, the harder you're going to retrace, and the longer you're usually going to spend down. So I really, you know, this sort of V reversal I'm okay with, but you kind of want to see it consolidate and then continue slowly. You don't really want it to just drop and pop over and over. No one wants to play something that's doing this, because you can't play that on like leverage, and playing it on spot is very stressful. But if you're looking at reversion to mean, the macro is up, you just need to find a good opportunity to enter if you're willing to hold this long term. And you know, it doesn't look terrible. Like if you're willing to zoom out, it doesn't really look terrible, but it would be a very stressful thing to trade. All I can say is if you're trading this, then I hope you are the kind of person who can set a stop and walk away and not be bothered by it. Now ADA, I drew this, I said basically 4600 was programmed. I think I drew this around here. I said there was no reason not to expect it to continue downward. I'm not going to bother to pull that up on Twitter or anything, but it's there. And yeah, this is even maybe a steeper decline at this point. So on the daily, you would have been looking for this sort of level to hold from previously, and it looks like it's not. Looks more like this kind of level was your best bet. So to look for a supporter block right through here on the daily. I mean, it doesn't look great, right? You tried to bounce off of it, you failed, and now you're sinking back into it. I don't really expect this to stay like oversold though. I would expect that bulls are going to step in, and the last time it was oversold was down here, and now you're being oversold up here. So this is a sort of thing that could easily like continue up from here. That's fine. I don't think it's terrible. I don't think it's like the worst risk reward out there. It's only a couple percent to the bottom of this. So I don't like to buy macro downtrends. I'd rather buy something that's, where's a good uptrend? Something that's going up like this, kind of gently, like it goes up a little, it consolidates, it goes up a little, it consolidates. I like to buy that sort of thing, that sort of price action, or it, you know, it has a nice move up and then it corrects a bit and then it sort of consolidates. And you see it like consolidating a little higher. That looks good to me. I like that sort of price action. I don't really like to buy when it's just macro down. But if you are a macro like buyer who likes to play those swings, you want to try to catch the falling knife, this would be the place to do it. Your downside risk, a couple percent. Your upside, 12, 13%. Not too bad. Coming off of oversold, could be a pretty nice place for reversal. Not me, not my style. But if it starts to show some strength, if it like wants to reclaim this level and start moving up, or if it wants to start rounding out, I would be very interested to buy it here. Otherwise, if it wants to like continue downward, I would be looking much lower, much lower. We are interested in a higher time frame though. If we come out, I think this was just me marking like an all-time high level. Don't necessarily think any of these are too important. Actually, that's a pretty decent line. Some of these are pretty sensible. Not in love with this stuff here, that I marked previously. Don't really like how that bisects that range. I think I would rather look to the bottom of it. Something like this makes more sense to me. And I think I marked the top of it because of this. And that's fine. I don't have any issue with that. I like to extend this out so it's there for a while. And yeah, that's more or less. Have to revisit where the resistance would be if we start to move up. Probably would want to just mark something like around there, but that's a problem for the future. For now, this is very much like the place to rock. If you're gonna hold, you gotta hold here. Send this to the back. And extend this a little bit just to make it easier to see. And we want our candles in the front. Yeah, so I would be looking at something like this, perhaps. And so far, so not great. Our RSI trending downward this whole time. You kind of had a bearish divergence, right? You're posting lower on the RSI while your price action goes up, and that bearish divergence might play out. If you're looking at overall price action, if you're a reversion to mean trader, you could make the argument that this is just making some noise, and that, you know, you're expecting some big bounce, like way up there. But I don't think that's very healthy to have huge... Why is this vibrating? Just move it a little bit. I don't think it's very healthy to... Yeah, it's just like... It's freaking out. I don't understand why it's doing... Okay. Anyway, you don't really want like big down, big down, big down. It's too volatile. It's not good for long-term future of anything. So we don't really want to see that happening. But as far as the macro goes, this would be an amazing cup and handle. It's like the longest cup and handle play of all time if it wanted to go down to 3k and then from there just rocket off into the future. I'm not calling that or anything, just saying it would be very impressive, very interesting to see. Yeah, I was shitting ADA all through this consolidation. I was very confident in it, and if you have been here when I discussed it before, unfortunately, as I accumulated this window, I was very proud of myself to take profits on this breakout, and then felt really smart when it retraced after I sold everything. And now here we are. So you can be right and still feel really fucking stupid sometimes, but I guess I got my nut, right? I got more money to invest than I had before, and that's always the goal. Whether you accumulate a lot or a little, you want to accumulate and not lose, so that's my cope. For now, we need a little bit more strength. I think this is kind of scary, to be losing the EMA, to be very close to losing the RSI, because we're nowhere near oversold. And in fact, we have basically never been oversold. The only time was when we first entered this range, and it's like, okay, it's time to start accumulating. So for us to be oversold on this, I think we would have to come down around here. And the risk is going to be posting something like this. And that would be a worst case scenario, I think. To post a head and shoulders, to kind of come down into oversold, get a little bit of relief, and then fail. That's the nightmare scenario if you like ADA. The best case scenario for ADA, I think, would be to find a range. Whether it's here or just kind of like a rounding out event. It needs to chill the fuck out and stop doing these big pumps. It's not sustainable, it's not healthy, it's not healthy price action at all. It's just FOMO that gets sold off. And the harder you pump, the harder you sell off. It almost always retraces like that, you know, and the bigger the pump becomes, the longer you spend cooling off from it. So I really don't want to see that. I would rather see some kind of stabilization. You know, when you put in a long rounding out floor like this, then that's what lays the foundation to do nice growth. When you do big pumps like this, that's what causes nasty retraces, and it forces the necessity of consolidation. And so I don't like this. But you know, you can't argue that it's got a nice little trend to it, doesn't it? It's on the verge of losing that. So I don't think that losing this trend is like a reason to evacuate. Like, it's almost certainly going to lose this trend unless it just were to pump like mad, and that's not really sustainable. I want to see it lose this trend. I want to see it go a little bit sideways and chill the fuck out if I'm going to re-enter ADA anytime this year. Basically, I would want to see it kind of doing this going into the new year. I don't want to see it do this. I really don't. It's not sustainable. It's just going to correct back down if it does. So unless you're interested in shorting, that's not what you want. Fucking Sol, bro. I mean, how can you see this and be like bullish on Sol? This is daily, and as you can see, this sort of level is asserting itself. We're losing the RSI. So we had this nice rounding out. Oh no, we had this nice rounding out attempt. And normally what you'd want to see there is something like this. But instead, what we saw was a failure to be able to break through resistance and then death. So we are posting a lower low after posting a lower high. And so our current price action doesn't look great. If we are to post another lower high, we would expect it to be about here. And then expect range failure, which might lead to one of these sorts of levels, where you previously had some kind of consolidation. It's hard to tell exactly where that would be, as this doesn't have a very long history. This daily, I don't really want to delete, to be honest. I'd like to keep this, so I'll probably just demote these to make sure they don't show on the weekly. So bear with me for a moment while I demote all of this. Unfortunately, if there is some sort of shortcut to doing this, I don't know it. So if you do, please teach me, because I hate this process. And there's probably a way to save like a format painter or something, I would assume. But I'm just too old and dumb to know what that is. Feel free to let me know if you know. I would really, really love that. So, taking all of this off, I don't want to delete it. I want to keep my monthly for this particular project. Sorry, my daily. Thinking even higher time frames. Now you know what's going on behind the scenes here all the time. Yeah, I think this is a very easy chart to mark for the weekly. You're basically going to have two lines, right? And that's it. So you have the opportunity to mark something like this. Maybe there's going to be some sort of interim level. And if I had to mark some sort of block, it would be that. But I don't think it's really necessary. So the scary thing about this, there's no 3-touch anywhere until you get down here. And here you have two bodies, you've got this wick top, and this is sort of a close enough. We're playing the close enough game down here. You could mark this as well. Anywhere in here is fine. These are just ranges. The top of this doesn't really line up. I mean, this is sort of a close enough. You could call this like a close enough 3-touch. I wouldn't hate that. but I would just extend it to be a block if you do want to mark that level. And I don't really love this because it's not very respected by this candle. I would rather just mark maybe the bottom and leave this out of the picture for now. Yeah, I just don't like that at all. To be honest, I'm just going to take that out. So I don't think you really got anything. And this is really just a range. You can draw this purple box if you want, as sort of an inspiration or whatever, but this is really what you're dealing with. You can slice it a different way if you want, but this is what Sol is at this point. And you have a previous range down here as well, where if you really wanted to, you would be drawing an accumulation zone here. And this is how I had originally been charting Sol. I was charting this zone when it broke out. And shout out to everyone who was shilling Sol all the way to the bottom, because I saw this. It was being shilled like crazy. And then it started to tick up. And I remember seeing it around here. And looking at the chart and just thinking, who in the right mind would fucking buy this? Like after this, who would buy that? It's not even like oversold or anything. No one's going to buy this. And yeah, so here we are. And unfortunately, it took this consolidation for me to become interested. So I was not a genius who caught this move. But I started with Sol around here, and now I think the best case scenario would be seeing some continued consolidation here. I really don't want to see this just like pop off. I think if it does, it's going to have a real rough time for the long term. I think it would be much better to see a repeat of history where this has a nice bull flag or something. That's not really a bull flag at all. A nice pop off into consolidation, pop off into consolidation. And I'm okay with this like coming down and doing whatever. It's okay if it wants to like round out a bit, whatever. Your EMA has like a lot of room where this could run and round out, and I would be totally fine with that in the long term. I just don't want to see it do something like this, because I think if it does, it's going to have a long winter. And you know, this sort of pop-off tends to retrace quite a bit. I tend to look for about a 30% retrace. And so far, that's about where we are. We're about at a 30% retrace. So it would be really nice to see this consolidate through this range. And if that is to happen, then I would accumulate. I sold. Let's see. I bought throughout. I kind of averaged in, and I sold a lot, sort of, not at the top, not at the exact top or anything. I'm not like a wizard, but I sold pretty high, and I was keeping some coins, just profit coins that cost me nothing. But when this level failed, I got rid of those as well. So I would be interested to reaccumulate them at some point, but at this point, there's no reason to really go like all in or whatever, unless you're seeing some kind of body close above this range. I would assume this is going to be a range for the time being, and if it breaks down a bit, that's completely okay with me. I'm totally okay with that. I would not be bearish on this unless, at this point, unless it flips the EMA, which you can see it hasn't really ever done. Once it crossed over, I mean, the EMA didn't exist until here, and then once it met the EMA, it went above, and it's held, and I expect we'll revisit it again, and that it will hold, and so will continue to perform. That's my expectation, but for the time being, I'm not really in it. The downside potential for the bottom of the range is a bit higher than my risk tolerance will allow, but it's not bad. It's not bad. It's just that I expect a little more discounts, and if I'm wrong, then I'll just buy higher. It's not a big deal. But Sol has a very simple chart to follow right now, very easy to understand. and it looks fine. Looks fine for now. Not too worried unless the EMA falls. I think we have a lot of room to cool off. We were definitely overbought through this area, and we're just now coming down out of overbought. So it would be good to see this kind of do something like this, you know? I expect this range to be a very familiar place for us for a while. And if I'm wrong, then I'll just buy it up here on the breakout and write it off into the stars. Don't ever be afraid to buy higher. Like, if you didn't buy in this range, and you just waited until there was a close above, and you bought, you know, through here, or even like pretty late and you bought up here, you're still in profit. Like, it's totally fine to wait until a range breakout and just buy a little higher. So if you just want to wait until the range breakout and buy a little higher, it's probably going to be fine. I'm not too stressed about that. Looks pretty good. It doesn't look amazing, but it looks pretty good. I hate XTZ. Just full disclosure, I hate this as a coin. I don't like its history. I didn't like its team. You know, this is where everyone was shitting it. Everyone's saying XTZ is the future. It's going to be everything. And so I can't remember exactly where I played this coin, but it was bouncing around this range a bit, and I think I played it right at the end. I bought, I think, this support, and I remember I made, like, not a ton, but yeah, 15-30% something, I don't know. I basically played this, and then I hadn't touched it since, and I'm not convinced that this is, you know, gonna become something out of nowhere. But if you're looking at like really big macro structure, you can almost see like a double bottom. So what you would want in that case is like a retest of the neckline, which you kind of have already here. So you would want to go up from here. Looking a little closer on this daily, you've got a pretty clear reversion to mean pattern going. I would probably paint it more like this at this point, but it's very volatile. I don't like it a lot. Way above, way below, way above, way below, way above, way below. Like, what are you gonna do with this? It doesn't look great. I don't like it at all. I don't like this price action. It was being shilled by certain accounts that I won't name, out of fucking nowhere, really, just out of nowhere. So even though you have certain structures that look sensible, it's not really like, I don't know what to say, without losing tact, right? Without being tactless, I don't trust the accounts that are already selling this, and I don't feel that this price action is natural. I don't feel like it's natural demand, and I don't really feel that people are going to, especially new people coming in, who only know like AVAX and Sol. I don't really think they're going to go back to an older coin like XTZ and suddenly revive it. It doesn't tend to happen, and I don't really expect it to happen here. But yeah, like this weekly paints a pretty bleak picture. You came up almost to overbought, and you've had pumps like this before, right? Like I said, these U sort of things tend to be continuation. The more you pump, the more you have to correct and consolidate, right? You pump and then you have to correct and consolidate, and then you pump and you have to correct and consolidate. So even if this is like something that's gonna go up over time, really, where's your range? Something like, at best, you're looking at something like this, and it has sort of a failed breakout, and you would expect this to drop back into range. I don't really believe this. I'm just giving you options of things you can consider. You know, looking back toward its history and its current price action. I really hate this. It's in the house to say. I really fucking hate XTZ. I don't like to trade it. I've only traded it through this consolidation period. When it was very clear it was popping out. And, you know, the same accounts that are shitting it right now, they were also shitting it through here. And I have not forgotten that you know, XTZ is the future, XTZ, you know, and they loaded the bags, and then you can see how that turned out for the average user. And now the same people are trying to say, no, XTZ is different. They're going to launch DeFi NFTs. They're going to, you know, XTZ is reviving. And the same people who were pumping it through here are pumping it now. And so maybe you get another nice leg up and some sort of blow off top, but they are going to dump on you. Like, I don't at all believe that this is natural price action. And if you really want to be a big downer, the reversion to mean on this is quite nasty. I don't trust it. Like, to be honest, I don't even want to chart it, but I guess we can, because we're here. So, okay, boom, there's your chart. That's the only line you need. Catches the bottoms of this, tops of these. Catches the failed to break out here and currently acting as support. You don't really need anything else. This is the only line you need for XTZ. I know I'm being lazy by doing that, because I don't like it. I don't like charting XTZ. I don't like to encourage people to buy it. So if I were not being so lazy, probably just draw a line around here. Call this your control point. Somewhere through here. I think I would lower that, actually. So something like that. And we can just call these nice even numbers for the obsessive people. But I'm honestly just not going to put much effort into this because I don't believe in it. And if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. That's fine. I will look for trades elsewhere. But I don't trust it at all. I don't trust the people who are shitting it, and I don't trust the future, and don't like anything about it. And I'm going to stay away from it. And that is that. I fully expect that this range was not like the generational bottom and it's going to only go up from here. I don't expect that at all. And if I'm wrong, then whatever. There's 1,000 other coins we can trade, such as Link. This is another one that I just have on its weekly chart permanently because it's a very nice weekly price action, very predictable sort of coin. There's its god line. Don't really want to change anything here. We could perhaps slightly adjust a couple things. Are these daily? Where did this red come from? That must be daily levels. Yeah, those are definitely from the daily. So I might need to hide some of these. Let's do that real quick. I know this is an annoying process, but imagine you have to be the one to do it instead of just waiting for me to do it. It's really isn't a fun time. I know there must be a format painter. I'm going to leave this one. I'm going to promote it to a weekly level because it is. And the rest of this, I'm going to make it easier to see what's happening with our beloved shitcoins. This one I think can also be promoted. There's a lot of confluence, the daily and the weekly on Link, which is great, but also kind of scary. So, do I like this line on the weekly? Kind of not, kind of not. I think it should be more current. Favor the more current price action. And this is quite messy. I think what I would like to do is get rid of some of this stuff that's a bit off in the distance. Probably have to acknowledge this sort of line. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really like that. I think I'll just deal with that as it comes. And we could probably put something toward here, but, you know, again, it's sort of ugly and don't really think this looks great. You have a very shitty potential for Head and Shoulders. And if this is going to break down, that's the god line where you would expect it to do some kind of retest or just fail outright. And I think we can clean this up even more. And we could really delete like all this stuff that is far above. I don't think it's necessary to have all of that right now. And yeah, we had a potential to sort of have a sideways reversion to mean, but with the current price action dipping down, this is our reversion to mean line, which is not looking too great. So what you might hope to see here is some sort of descending wedge, which then you would expect to break upward. That's your bullish case. But your bearish case is that this becomes like a Head and Shoulders, and that sort of wedge wouldn't play out, that it would break down instead. If you are trading Link, this is the place to fucking do it, right? So what is our downside risk? I might actually enter this like today. Downside risk is like 2%. So that's pretty great. If you're looking to give yourself a buffer and not be flushed out, you'd probably put that buffer closer to these wick bottoms though. So in that case, you're looking at a 7% downside, which is maybe not so hot. So the way you deal with that is you put scum bids. Maybe around here, maybe the bottom, like 5 or 6% down. You put your scum bids, you know, maybe buy a little bit just in case, but put your scum bids down here, and then your ultimate ejection would be down around there. And that's your god line. I would be surprised if this doesn't get like a little bit of a pump, just considering where it is right now with the weekly support. But I would also be surprised if that little pump turned into a legitimate reversal out of nowhere. I mean, Link had a beautiful run, the longest time, and then it basically pulled like a 2018 Bitcoin, except that it didn't taper and fall off, right? So, I mean, this was the big hope that you would pull a double bottom and confirm the neck, and instead it just fell down and confirmed it as resistance. Right now, losing this as a resistance would be pretty catastrophic. I think it would spell a long winter. And we're moving into the bottom half of the RSI, so probably we're going to be a little bearish. Bias would be down. Bias has to be down because that's what the macro is. If we look at the daily for this sort of level, we can see that there was an attempt to form a range, but there wasn't even really an attempt to break out of that range. It just kind of shit itself. And so now what you're hoping to see would be some sort of consolidation down here, but it's not looking really promising at the moment. It wicked completely to support, and instead of like recovering off of that very quickly, it's just nosediving into it. But the good news is, if you're looking at the daily, reaching toward this support is going to really put it close to oversold, which could give it some steam for a bounce. If you are going to bounce from Support though, it might be very small. It might just be like this sort of range, which is kind of what was happening before. Where if you're buying, you know, this, then it could have very easily just gone the other way. So I don't think the risk reward is really great, considering the momentum, considering this huge sell pressure. You have sort of an attempted push up, attempt at kind of not really consolidating, but just hovering around this price, and then you fell. Then you have an attempt at consolidating, didn't even try to break up, and then fell. So even if we consolidate down here, our bias has to be that it will continue downward. So you can play the risk reward, but I'd kind of look for a wick down here more than wanting to buy this area and then just, even if it does reverse, it's probably going to wick down and then reverse. I don't love it. I don't love it at all. I like Link as a project, but you know, the selling pressure, especially from the team, it's a bit excessive. And if you see insiders selling, it's usually a bad sign. Cake, don't know what the fuck happened here since the last time I charted it. Holy shit. So the last time I charted it, it looked like it wanted to kind of consolidate, and it did not. It wanted to shit itself completely. And so I think it would be fine to just delete these, not really going to be relevant. And to look at the weekly, it's a bit strange. So you could mark this, but you could also go for the bottoms. And I think the real solution to that is just to call it a range. The temptation, I think, would be to pop this down a little, and I don't really hate that. I'm not like against that, considering these two are very close. So I mean, it makes your range larger, but also it kind of seems to line up with what's happening right now. The macro is very obviously down. You've just got a high, a lower high, a slightly lower high. All the lows kind of equal until now. Seems that this is probably going to close below. So not looking great. This was essentially a failed breakout. And we can mark that level as well. Seems pretty stable. And so what you have here is, I mean, you've got like a range above that it tried to break back into and failed. I think I would mark it probably here for recency. I mean, it kind of extends well enough. But yeah, that would be just the fact that this did kind of consolidate, and it tried to break its previous high and was completely rejected, and now is most likely going to post a candle body close in spot block under the EMA, and most likely this RSI is fucked as well. If we can see, is this below 50? It probably is. Yeah, just slightly. So in the short term, this doesn't look great unless this can turn into like another wick. You're kind of far right now, kind of far from the spot bottom. So your downside risk is like 6%, your upside 25. 1 to 4 is like not terrible, but it's still not a risk I would take. I would rather see maybe this turns into a wick and then we post some green. I think really the play here would be just waiting for a close above this would be the safest thing to do. At the very least, you would want to get on track to close above this again. It will probably do something like that if it's going to be bullish. It would close above there again, but given the struggle at this level, I would rather buy higher. I'd rather buy above this than take a risk down here. If this fails, it's not like a long way to go or anything, you know, probably around there. So there's some pretty clear levels. If that level were to fail, you would have like a long way down. You're probably looking like this. But for now, I think you would at least want to wait and see where this weekly closes. If this weekly can turn this into a wick and close above support, that might be a good indicator for the coming week to make an attempt to reclaim this sort of level. But if it's going to close below EMA and really just maintain this local downtrend and maintain the macro downtrend at the same time, then not promising at all. The only other things I have open are Tencent, which is playing out beautifully. I was shilling it as it hit this sort of, what can I say? As it was approaching this trend line, I was really shilling it. This is very clearly like parabolic downturn, but this is stocks. I know most of you are not interested in stocks, but accumulating Tencent through December, and AT&T is... Holy shit, man. AT&T is losing its trend line, like its eternal trend line. If you have this sort of sideways wedge, it can go either way, but of course you want to see it break up, and yeah, it's hard to fight that, right? But nobody gives a shit about those, so we'll call it there. That's all the shit coins I have. But now there's Bitcoin one more time. So you can see where we are now. We need to hold about 52k, and as long as we can hold 50-ish, I think we're good to go for new all-time highs. ETH USD. Did I not? Wait, what the fuck? I swear I did. Oh, I did ETH BTC. ETH BTC, I think short term might feel a little bit of pain, but I'll probably continue to do well going into the future. So, most bullish on ETH, not looking too bad on Bitcoin. Double rainbow meme is broken now. I can't post my double rainbow anymore. So I'm pretty sad about that, but not sad about becoming richer by having half of my allocation into Bitcoin instead of Ethereum right now, because it's not the greatest, but you know, this is basically just a pennant. And pennants tend to break upward. So that's going to be all for today. It's been about 2 hours. My voice is giving out and I need to go pretend to be productive. I'm not happy if I don't feel like I do something useful in my day. So I hope this was of service to you, and if you have any requests, you can always send them to me on Twitter. My DMs are open. I might not accept your DM for like a conversational DM if I haven't already. I might miss it. The best way, rather than sending a DM, is to just reply to a post I make. I don't care if it's off topic. Like if I like post about how much I love cheese, you can still reply to that and just say, hey, please chart, you know, XYZ, and that's fine. Doesn't bother me at all to get that. That bothers me a little bit, let's be honest. It's sort of like, what are you talking about? I'm talking about cheese right now, man. You just want to share in a mutual love of cheese. But you can do that. It's the best way to make sure that I see it, honestly, instead of DMing me. I get a lot of DMs that I don't really notice. If I haven't talked to you in the past, it won't give me an easy to see notification, and I'm old and bad at technology. So if there's something you want me to do, just reply to a random tweet and it will give me a notification. I'll see that. And if you don't like the weekly charts, I'm sorry, but this is the way it's going to be for a while. It's what I started with. It's what I'm best at. It's what I want to do a bit more of. Going forward, I'd like to get back to that. Seem to be hard capped at about 950. For some reason, anytime I gain a follower, I lose 2. And, you know, I don't show things. I don't make calls. I don't post memes and shit post. I just post charts. So... you know, that makes it harder to reach more people, but the purpose of what I do is to help people keep a bigger time frame mindset, to make safer trades, to take less risk and to grow their money more safely. That's my goal. I don't ask for like donations or Twitch tips or anything like that. I'm not looking for anything in return. I just want to help compare ideas. And not a lot of people, basically zero, on crypto Twitter who post high time frames. Everybody posts 4 hours or 1 day, mostly 1 day charts. Not a lot of people taking a macro view of things. So I'm trying to provide something that relieve you of stress and also help you make better decisions, and also is a service that not very many people are doing. So if you see something different than what I post, that's great. Please share it with me and we can compare notes. And it's very easy to change my mind. If you post a line that just makes way more sense, something I didn't notice, then I will immediately change my mind. I'm not like in love with any of this stuff. You can't be. If you want to trade, you can't be in love with your own charts. You have to be open to every suggestion, even if it seems crazy. If I can understand it, I will consider it. So we can do the best job that we can do together and make the best observations and the best trades that we can possibly make as a team. You know, I have a lot of experience, but I'm not clairvoyant. I can't see the future. I can only make educated guesses. That's what TA is about. It's about making educated guess and trying to predict how human behavior will play out. It's been a very different game over the years because, you know, when I started trading stocks, weren't really computers trading stocks or anything like that. It's too long ago. There weren't algorithms trading and bots tweeting. You know, there was no Twitter or YouTube or any of, you know, this wasn't around. So you had charts that maybe they updated with the price action at the end of the day or something, and you know, you're just trying to predict human behavior based on that. So there are a lot of resources available today that just weren't available a long time ago, and it's very interesting to see how people incorporate like fundamental analysis into what they are thinking, and how psychological levels play out when the market's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, instead of very limited time window only on New York time, and you're trying to trade that from Asia or something. It's a different game. I've had to evolve a lot. When I started charting crypto, I was not good at all. I don't like most of my charts, even that I make today. I look at them a couple months later, and sometimes, you know, like Link, sometimes they really hold up and they make sense. Some things like Soul, very easy to see what's happening. But other things, you know, they're so volatile, it's really hard for me even to make a prediction, and I just have to stay away from those things. And so I hope to remind that no one knows everything. No matter how confidently someone makes their posts on Twitter, they don't know what's going to happen. They say like, oh, 100K is programmed this year or whatever. The meme is up only, it's programmed, it's destiny, whatever. And, you know, you can say that. And if you're wrong, it doesn't cost them anything. And if they're right, then they get to say how they were right. But at the end of all of that, it's your money, and you have to protect yourself. Those people don't really care about strangers. They care about growing their own wealth. And so you must also care about growing your own wealth. I can make predictions all day, and you can make predictions all day, and, you know, everyone on CT make predictions. But at the end of all of that, you just have to try to protect your wealth and try to grow your wealth, and no one can be responsible for that but you. So it's in your best interest to take the trades that are the least emotionally taxing for you, and to share ideas and compare ideas and be willing to change your bias. And if you're uncertain about something, then to not enter into it. For example, KSM, I don't know what this is doing. it looks pretty bad to me. I would not be confident taking a trade. You know, if I had to trade, I would follow the trend and trade it down, but it could just as easily decide that this is a support now and go up. So I can't tell you what it's going to do. Nobody can tell you what it's going to do unless they're like, you know, $500 million and they're willing to just throw money at the market to buy, then they can tell you that it's going to go up. But as far as something like Bitcoin, where the market cap is too big for one person to really step in unless they are a billionaire and affect this, even if they're a billionaire, is probably not going to be affecting it very much as it approaches, like, you know, crypto is getting into $1 trillion market caps, you know. So even if you have very, very big store of money available to you, you probably can't tell what is price going to do next week or even tomorrow, and you need to be safe and protect yourself. Don't take anyone's word for what's going to happen. You will develop your own instincts and you will fail a lot of time to develop that instinct as you go. You'll not make a lot of money the first year or 2 years or 5 years, and maybe it will take you a long time to realize that you're better off investing than trading or something like that. I think I'm a much better investor than a trader, which is why I only trade with about 4 to 5% of my portfolio. 96% of my money is in stocks. I do crypto. I know my Twitter is all crypto, so everyone thinks I am like all in crypto, but it's not the case. I'm 4 or 5% in crypto. And so if I lose half of my money in crypto, I lose 2% of my portfolio. It's not going to be like me ending up homeless or something. I could lose all of my money in crypto. I could go in on like 100x leverage DOGE short right now, and if I lost it all, I would be okay. If someone hacks me and steals all my crypto, they're not going to be made for life. They're not going to make it off of that like 4%, maybe even less, 3 to 5% of my portfolio. Is not going to like change their lives, you know, versus somebody ever like hacked, I don't want to say any names, but someone who's like 50% or 100% in crypto and they steal everything, you know, then they're like multi-millionaire or whatever. But also if those people make really bad trades in crypto, they could be, you know, they could really experience life-changing loss. So for me, this is a hobby. This is entertainment fee. Sometimes I throw like $50 or something at a leverage play, just because, I could spend this $50 on a video game, but I'm not really like, I'm too old. I don't play that many video games. So my entertainment fee, like I could go to a movie like with my wife or something. Tickets are very expensive in Japan, like $20 or something. So say I spend like $50, go to a movie or something, versus like $50 on a shitty leverage play. Maybe it plays out and maybe it doesn't. I just call that an entertainment cost. I don't consider that investing. It's just gambling. It's 100% gambling. So if that's your attitude, if you don't care if you win or lose, if you are not risking very much, if you can afford to lose what you are risking, then that's great. It's very low stress. It's a good hobby, but regard it as a hobby and not as like a lifestyle. This is not my lifestyle. You see, I don't post charts every day. I don't even post charts every few days sometimes. And it's because this is not a huge part of my portfolio. I don't need this to play out for me to one day retire comfortably or something like that. I don't need it to play out for me to like pay my bills or something. And if you're in that situation, I would encourage you from being in that situation longer than you have to be. If you find that it is high stress for you, if you find that you feel that crypto has to work for you, or you're never going to be able to quit your job or something, that's probably not true. It's probably not true. It's probably just that you are hoping to retire when you're very young or something like that. And there's nothing wrong with working a 9 to 5, whatever. I know it's like the meme to say like, oh, can't imagine what it would be like to work or something. But if you have a job that you don't hate, if you have a job that you at least enjoy a little bit, that provides a good service to people, that helps make people's lives better, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that, even if you don't need to. I'm working because I want to work. I went through a couple periods of my life where I tried to quit working, and as you may know, I work in public schools. Some of them are very poor, some of them not very well off, and I don't like actively teach in front of a classroom or anything. I used to be a teacher, but I don't actively like do anything like that. I'm just kind of helping with certain tasks, so to speak. I don't want to say exactly what I do, but I find it rewarding. I get to talk with a lot of teachers and help them, and I get to talk with a lot of students who are less intimidated to talk to me than to, say, a school principal or a teacher or somebody who has like direct authority over them. So I enjoy my job a lot, and I feel a great sense of reward for it. I can tell that I make a change in a lot of students' lives, and some of my students will come back after a long time and they will tell me, oh, you know, thanks to you teaching me about this, I was able to do this thing, or I was able to get a job here, and you know, I get to know that I'm making a difference, and that's a very nice luxury. A lot of people do great work and they will never hear about it. You know, if you're like a trauma surgeon or something, you're going to obviously like really help people, but they're not necessarily contacting you later, like send you a thank you card or whatever. It's a very big luxury that I know my job matters to other people, and that gives me a lot of satisfaction. So even though I've tried to stop working a couple times, I choose to do the job I'm doing. And as you probably know, nowhere in the world pays public education servants like money. I'm not doing it because it's the highest paying job. I used to do engineering, and if I really wanted to just make as much money as possible, I would go back to engineering. But I hated it, and it wasn't rewarding to me. It was a lot of stress, and the money wasn't worth that stress. So that tells you the kind of person I am, and that carries over into my trading style. My trading style is not make the most money possible, even if it's high stress, and even if it's, you know, all you're worried about is making money and all you care about is money, then you're probably gambling a little bit. And if you are getting into the habit of gambling and you're seeing these huge swings where you're up 1,000, down 1,000, up 5,000, down 5,000, then you really need to consider how you're going to handle that money, even if you get a lot of it. Are you ever going to be satisfied? And what are you going to do with that money that's going to change your life and give you a sense of purpose? A lot of the people you'll hear talk about making a lot of money in crypto, they lack a sense of purpose. They're unhappy because they don't know what to do now that they have a lot of money. And a lot of them end up on drugs. A lot of them, you know, Twitter is like all they have. Just like posting things for Twitter engagement is the highlight of their day, and you don't want to be that way. You need to find a sense of purpose in your life, and you don't need to wait until you have money to find that sense of purpose. Whether it's your family and just spending time with them, and your goal is to be able to be financially free so you can spend more time with your family or take them to nice vacations or something, that's fine. But understand too that you can love your family without being rich. You know, you don't need to be able to take them to Hawaii or something in order to show them that you love them. So whatever your sense of purpose is, you know, even if you don't need to work or do need to work, whatever it is, you know, your focus might be better spent trading casually, and maybe instead doing some training for a job that makes you happier, or a job that you also like but that will pay more or create more opportunities for you to travel or something like that. If crypto is the only way that you see yourself ever being free, then you are focusing on the wrong part of your life. So step away from the charts for a little bit. Take some some higher time frame trades. Go to the weekly, go to the monthly. Do some traditional investing maybe. Just buy some S&P and don't worry about it. And focus on what you can affect. Because you can't affect the price of some random shitcoin. You can't will it to go up through your brain just wanting something. You can't affect the price. All you can do is press buy and sell. But in your own life, you can affect how you treat the people around you and what kind of job you are willing to settle for. Maybe you can make a goal for yourself to get more education if there's a different job that you wish you had done. Most of you are very young and it's not too late for you, even if you have school debt or something, to get on a path to pursuing something else. To make a plan over 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. To make your life what you want it to be. And if all you know about what you want for your life is that you want a lot of money, you're probably not going to be happy with a lot of money. It will not give you a sense of purpose, and that's something you cannot buy. And unfortunately, earlier in this year, I had a friend who committed suicide because of that exact reason. He tried to start a few companies, and one of his companies succeeded very well. He was traveling all over the world. He was the CEO of his own company. He was able to do whatever he wanted. His traditional assets were astronomical. His crypto assets, I would say, probably had about 300 million in crypto, and I don't know what he did with that. If he left his family the keys or something when he died, but he ended up just going to like parties and raves and doing lots of drugs, just brazenly in public and everything. And he started to talk like when we tell him, you know, maybe we need to calm you down a little bit. You're kind of getting crazy and out of control. And you know, he was saying, I don't need to fix this life. I just need to start a new one. Like the only thing that's going to free me from this life is being reincarnated into a new one, and saying things like this. And you know, he couldn't find a sense of purpose, and he tried to find that sense of purpose in like drugs and in sex and this sort of thing. But he had already made the company he wanted to make. He had already gone where he wanted to go, and he had already made sure his family was secured forever. And he failed to find a sense of purpose. Keep going. And so no matter how much money you have, if you don't find a sense of purpose, it's not going to make you happy. He ended up dying alone in his car with no hope for his future and no one there who loved him. And this is unfortunately a very sad story, but a lot of people get in a similar situation and not killing themselves, but feeling like they are alone, feeling like there's no hope for them to do anything better with their lives. And this is a problem that faces a lot of people who are not in necessarily the middle of things. The average person with the average family doesn't really feel that sense of despair the same way that someone who is on the extreme bottom of like no money, or someone who is at the extreme top of like so much money that they have no sense of purpose anymore, tend to feel. So, you know, focus on what you can change. Focus on what you are able to do directly, what you can do for yourself or for your loved ones now. And that doesn't take money. It doesn't take money right now. If there's something you want to do that will change the course of your life, you can make a plan for it. and you have to have patience. If you don't have the patience to develop a goal for yourself, to figure out what steps you need to take and to begin that journey, then you definitely don't have the patience it will take you to get rich in the markets anyway. So do what you can for yourself. Don't believe people who make calls, make predictions, make promises. The only one who can really keep the promises to you, the only one who it's important keeps the promises to you is yourself. If you are breaking your promises to yourself, then money isn't going to help you. People can't help you. You have to show yourself respect and patience and value. And from there will flow your success. Okay, well, that got a little dark and strange, but you know, old people sometimes they just like to hear themselves talk, right? So on that note, I will let you get back to your day. I hope you have seen something useful here. Again, if you want to make a request, just reply to any tweet. It doesn't matter. Just reply to a tweet and tell me, hey, please start this. And if you are polite about it, I will do it. And I look forward to moving to a higher time frame, hopefully saving you some stress and sharing ideas with you in the future. Please feel free to contact me for anything you want. I can't guarantee a fast reply, but do my best. And I'm not an expert on really much of anything, but whatever I can do for you, I will. Let's work together, make the world a little bit less shitty for everyone we can, okay? Until next time, hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you in the future.